The party was perfect. 50 guests wandered through my oceanfront villa, their voices echoing off the soaring ceilings I had designed, their fingers trailing along the custom railings I had specified, their eyes wide at the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Pacific. 3 years of my life. Every detail, every decision, mine. I stood near the entrance scanning faces, waiting. My grandmother Evelyn squeezed my arm as she passed. "They're not coming, are they?" she whispered. Before I could answer, my colleague David approached with a warm smile. "Alex, this place is incredible. Where's your family? I'm dying to meet the parents who raised such a talented architect." The question hit me like a physical blow. I opened my mouth, searching for an excuse, when Marcus appeared at my elbow. "They had another commitment," he said smoothly, rescuing me. "But Alex's grandmother is here. Mrs. Evelyn, have you met David?" As they moved away, I caught my reflection in the window, a successful woman in a designer dress standing in her multi-million-dollar home surrounded by people who admired her work. And I had never felt more invisible in my life, because 40 minutes away in a cramped rental apartment that my parents had paid for my sister Chloe was having her housewarming party, and my mother and father were there, celebrating her. Again, always her. I excused myself and walked to the master bedroom, closing the door behind me. My hands were trembling. Not with sadness anymore, with something sharper, clearer, a rage so pure it burned away every excuse I had ever made for them. This was it. This was the moment I stopped being the daughter who waited by the door and became the woman who would make them regret every single time they looked past me. But before I tell you what I did next, if you're enjoying this story of standing up for yourself and finally getting the respect you deserve, please hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see how this ends. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever been the forgotten child in your family. Now, let me take you back to where it all began. I wasn't always the woman who owned a multi-million-dollar villa. I was once a 9-year-old girl who received used textbooks for Christmas while her sister unwrapped a Barbie dream house. I tried to smile to be grateful until I heard my mother's voice drifting from the kitchen that night. "Alex only cares about studying anyway. She doesn't need toys." I was 9, and I learned that wanting something made me wrong. At 13, I won first place at the National Science Fair. 8 months of work, a sustainable city model that caught the attention of university professors. The ceremony was Saturday at 2. My parents went to Chloe's dance recital instead. 3 minutes of ballet she'd learned in 6 weeks. I called them from the empty auditorium, trophy in hand. My mother's voice was distracted. "Oh, honey, that's wonderful. We're taking Chloe for ice cream. You can take the bus home, right?" I took the bus, put the trophy on my shelf. No one ever asked to see it. The pattern became my normal. Straight A's while Chloe barely passed. Awards while she skipped class. I did everything right. It was never enough. When my college acceptance letter arrived, full scholarship to a top architecture program, I found my family in the living room circled around Chloe. She was crying. She hadn't gotten into her safety school. My father was on the phone with admissions pulling strings. My mother was stroking her hair. I stood in the doorway with my future in my hands. "Oh, Alex, not now. Can't you see your sister is having a crisis?" I went upstairs, called my grandmother Evelyn. She cried. She was proud. She told me I was going to do incredible things. She was the only one who ever did. College saved me. I wasn't the forgotten daughter anymore. I was Alex Vance, top of my class, the architect everyone wanted to work with. I met Marcus Thorne in a late-night studio session, both of us designing impossible buildings, dreaming about changing the world. He was brilliant. He saw me. Not the version my family wanted, but the real me. I also met Zara during a summer internship. She was a project manager with a sharp tongue and an even sharper mind. She didn't tolerate nonsense from anyone, and she saw through my polite, accommodating facade immediately. One day, after I had apologized for something that wasn't my fault for the 3rd time in an hour, she pulled me aside. "Stop apologizing for existing," she said. "You're brilliant. Own it." Those words changed something in me. After graduation, I took a job at a prestigious firm in San Francisco. I worked 100-hour weeks. I learned everything I could. I saved every penny. And then, 5 years ago, I took the biggest risk of my life and started my own architectural practice. Marcus joined me as a partner. Zara came on as our head of project management. We were small, scrappy, and hungry, and we were successful. My designs started getting noticed. We won competitions. We landed major clients. I built a reputation for creating spaces that felt democratic, where every area had equal importance, where there was no hierarchy of rooms, no head of the table, just equal beautiful space. It wasn't just an aesthetic choice. It was a philosophy born from a childhood of being relegated to the corner, the afterthought, the one who didn't get a seat at the table. 3 years ago, I bought a piece of land on the coast. It was expensive, almost impossibly so, but I had been saving and investing wisely. I designed my dream home. Not just a house. A statement. A 3-story, 5,000 square foot architectural masterpiece with floor-to-ceiling windows, an infinity pool that seemed to blend into the ocean, and an interior design that made every major architecture magazine want to feature it. I designed every detail myself. The floating staircase made of reclaimed wood and steel. The open concept kitchen that flowed into the living space with no barriers. The bedroom balconies that captured the sunrise. Even the guest house was more luxurious than most people's primary homes. This wasn't just a house. This was proof. Proof that I didn't need their approval. Proof that I had value. Proof that the forgotten daughter had built something extraordinary. During construction, I would visit the site every day, watching my vision come to life. I kept my old wooden desk from childhood in what would become my home office, the only piece of furniture I had brought with me through every move, every apartment, every transition. It was scarred and worn, but it was mine. It was where I had done my homework while Chloe watched TV downstairs. It was where I had drafted my first building designs. It was my anchor. When the house was finally complete, I stood in the empty living room and made myself a promise. I would never let anyone make me feel small again. This was my empire, my achievement, my vindication. I decided to throw a housewarming party. It seemed like the normal thing to do. Share this accomplishment with family and friends. Maybe some naive part of me hoped this would finally be the thing that made my parents see me. How could they not be proud of this? I called my mother to tell her about the party, to give her the date, to finally share something I was genuinely excited about. Her response was lukewarm at best. "Oh, that sounds nice, dear. We'll try to make it. Chloe's been talking about moving too, you know. Much more practical than your place, I'm sure. Something she can actually afford." I ignored the dig. I sent formal invitations. I planned everything meticulously. I hired caterers. I bought champagne. I imagined my parents walking through the door, seeing what I had built, and finally saying they were proud. And then I got that text message. "We're going to skip your housewarming party. Chloe just moved into her new place and she's swamped. You understand." I stared at those words. Chloe had just moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment in a mediocre neighborhood, something my parents had funded entirely. She was probably spending the day arranging her Instagram aesthetic and planning her housewarming live stream, and my parents chose that over seeing the culmination of my life's work. Something inside me snapped, not broke, snapped into place. I called Marcus, then Zara. Within an hour, they were at my house, finding me on the balcony, cleaning up broken glass, my jaw set with determination. "What happened?" Marcus asked, concern flooding his face. I showed them the text. Zara's expression went from concerned to furious in about 3 seconds. "Are you kidding me?" she exploded. "After everything, after building this incredible place, they're choosing Chloe's apartment over this." Marcus put a hand on my shoulder. "What do you want to do?" I looked at both of them, these people who had shown up for me when my own family never did, and I smiled. Not a sad smile, a dangerous one. "I want to change everything I said. This party isn't going to be what I planned. It's going to be better. It's going to be for people who actually matter, people who have been overlooked, forgotten, pushed aside. People like us." Over the next week, I completely redesigned my guest list. I uninvited the family members who had never been there for me. Instead, I invited Professor Roberts, the teacher who had mentored me in college, and whom my father had publicly dismissed at a faculty event as too theoretical. I invited James, a childhood friend Chloe had bullied and then lied about, nearly getting him expelled. I invited every person I knew who had been treated as less than who had been overlooked, who had fought their way up from nothing. And then I got a call that changed everything. David Chin, a producer from HGTV, had heard about my house through a mutual connection. He wanted to feature it on their show about exceptional homes and the stories behind them. At first, I was going to say no. I didn't want that kind of attention. But then an idea formed sharp and perfect. I'll do it on one condition, I told him. The focus isn't just on the house, it's on the story. It's about someone who built their dream from nothing, who created a space where everyone is equal because they never had that growing up. David was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's exactly the kind of story we want to tell." The camera crew came a week before the party. They filmed every corner of the house. They interviewed me about my design philosophy, about why every room had equal importance, why there was no head of the table in my dining room, why the guest rooms were just as luxurious as the master suite. Architecture isn't just about buildings, I said to the camera. It's about how space makes people feel. Growing up, I always felt like I was in the background, the corner, the afterthought. This house is designed so that every space, every corner, every room has equal value. Because every person has equal value, even if they weren't treated that way. They filmed the party preparations. They captured me receiving that text from my mother and my decision to change the guest list. David narrated over the footage, his voice warm and understanding. Alexandra Vance didn't just build a house. She built a home for forgotten souls, a place where the overlooked become the celebrated, where the pushed aside find their place at the table. The party itself was magical. The house was filled with warm light, good food, and genuine laughter. These were my people, the ones who understood what it meant to be underestimated. Professor Roberts gave a toast about resilience. James thanked me for being the first person from our hometown to see his worth. Marcus and Zara stood beside me the entire night, my chosen family, and we raised our glasses to new beginnings. My grandmother Evelyn came, of course. She was the only blood family I invited. She found me in my office during the party looking at my old wooden desk. "You didn't need to win, sweetheart," she said softly. "You just needed to stand firm on your own 2 feet. And look at you now. You're not just standing, you're soaring." I hugged her tight, this woman who had been my anchor when everyone else let me drift. The HGTV episode was scheduled to air 3 weeks later. I didn't tell my family about it. I didn't tell them anything. I had gone almost completely silent in the family group chat, responding only to direct questions with brief, polite answers. The night the episode aired, I was home alone, deliberately. I poured myself a glass of wine, the good stuff this time, and I waited. My phone was on silent, but I watched it light up with notifications. First one, then 5, then 20. Then the calls started coming. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned on my TV and watched the episode myself. It was beautifully done. They showed the house in all its glory, the ocean views, the thoughtful design, the spaces that felt both grand and intimate. And then they showed the text message from my mother, pixelated for privacy, but still clear. They showed me making the decision to change the guest list. They showed clips from the party, all these people who had been overlooked finding joy and connection. And they showed me talking about growing up feeling invisible. "When you're constantly treated as if you don't matter, you start to believe it," I said in the interview. "But then you realize something important. You don't need their validation. You never did. You just need your own. And once you have that, once you build your own table, you get to decide who sits at it." The episode ended with the aerial footage of the house at sunset looking like something from a dream and David's final words. "Sometimes the greatest architecture comes not from what we build, but from what we leave behind." Alexandra Vance left behind the need for approval from people who never saw her worth. And in doing so, she built something extraordinary. My phone was exploding now. I finally looked at it. Texts from old high school friends, emails from former colleagues, and of course, frantic messages from my family. I opened the family group chat first. It was chaos. My mother had sent about 15 messages in rapid succession. "Alexandra, what have you done? How dare you air our private family matters on national television? People are calling us. This is humiliating. Call me right now." Chloe's messages were even more hysterical. "You've ruined my life. Do you know what people are saying about me online? I lost my sponsorship deal, all because you wanted to make me look bad. I hate you." My father's messages were attempts at placating. "Alex, I think we need to talk about this calmly. Your mother is very upset. Perhaps you should have discussed this with us first. Let's all take a breath and figure out how to handle this." I sipped my wine and said nothing. I didn't owe them a response. Not anymore. Over the next few days, the story exploded beyond anything I could have imagined. The episode went viral. Clips were shared across every social media platform. Think pieces were written about favoritism in families, about golden children, and scapegoats about the architecture of equality. My inbox was flooded with messages from people sharing their own stories of being overlooked, forgotten, treated as less than. Chloe's perfectly curated Instagram, where she had been planning to showcase her new apartment, became a battlefield. Comments flooded in comparing her modest place to my oceanfront villa, pointing out the irony that my parents had funded her apartment while I had built mine from scratch. She tried to defend herself, posting a teary video about how the show was edited to make her look bad, but it only made things worse. Your sister built that herself, and you can't even be happy for her. One comment read with thousands of likes. Maybe try being proud instead of jealous. My parents started receiving calls from their social circle. My mother, who prided herself on her image in the community, was suddenly the subject of gossip. My father's business partners were asking uncomfortable questions. The narrative had shifted, and they were no longer the respectable family with 2 daughters. They were the parents who had ignored their successful child in favor of their mediocre one. I maintained complete radio silence for a week. I went to work, I took meetings, I fielded interview requests from major publications, all wanting to know more about the architect who had designed a house with no hierarchy. I said yes to some, no to others. I controlled the narrative now, and then my phone rang. Not a text, a call from my mother. I almost didn't answer. But Evelyn was sitting across from me in my living room, and she gave me an encouraging nod. I put it on speaker. "Alexandra?" My mother's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "What exactly do you think you're doing? Do you have any idea what you've put this family through? People are talking. My friends are asking me questions I don't have answers to. You've made us look like monsters on national television." I leaned back in my chair, my voice calm, cold. "I didn't make you look like anything, Mother. I told the truth. I showed them the text you sent me when you decided Chloe's mediocre apartment was more important than my multi-million-dollar home that I built with my own hands." "That's not fair," she sputtered. "You're twisting things. We've always supported you. Just because we couldn't make it to one party doesn't mean we don't care about you." "One party," I repeated, and there was steel in my voice now. "Mother, you missed my National Science Fair Awards ceremony. You forgot about my college graduation dinner because Chloe had a bad date. You've never once asked to see the buildings I've designed. Not once. This wasn't about one party. This was about a lifetime of being invisible in my own family." There was silence on the other end. Then I heard Chloe's voice, shrill and desperate in the background. She grabbed the phone. "Alex, you're so cruel. Do you have any idea what you've done to me? I've lost everything. My sponsorships, my followers are turning on me. People at work are treating me differently, all because you wanted revenge. This is so typical of you, always so jealous, always trying to make everything about you." Something in my chest tightened, but I kept my voice level. "Chloe, you don't know what it's like to have everything destroyed until you've had to rebuild it yourself. I've done that. Multiple times. I did it every time you and Mom and Dad made me feel like I didn't matter. I rebuilt myself from nothing. What I did wasn't cruel. It was survival." Grandmother Evelyn leaned forward, then her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Judy Richard," she addressed my parents, her tone cold in a way I had never heard before. "You did this. Both of you. You chose favorites. You made one daughter feel worthless while spoiling the other. Alex didn't destroy this family. She just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your own choices." There was a sharp intake of breath from my mother. "Evelyn, you can't possibly think." "I think," my grandmother continued, "that you have been cruel to my granddaughter for her entire life. And now that she's successful beyond your wildest dreams, you still can't be happy for her. That says everything anyone needs to know about you." My father's voice came through, then weak and uncertain. "Alex, I think what your mother is trying to say is that we wish you had come to us first. We could have worked this out privately. This didn't need to become a public spectacle." I almost laughed. "Dad, you've been silent my whole life. Every time Mom dismissed me, every time Chloe was cruel, you just stood there. You chose silence over defending me. So why should I have given you the courtesy of a private conversation? You haven't earned that." But we're family, he said, and I could hear the desperation creeping in. Family should stick together. We should be able to forgive and move forward. You're right, I said quietly. We should be able to. But that requires acknowledgement, apology, change, and I haven't heard any of that. All I've heard is anger that I dared to stop accepting how you treated me. I took a breath, and when I spoke again, my voice was steady as stone. I'm done being the daughter who begs for scraps of attention. I'm done being grateful when you remember I exist. I built a life without you, and it's a beautiful life. If you want to be part of it going forward, things are going to have to change. And I mean really change. Not performative apologies. Real accountability. There was silence on the other end. Then my mother's voice, colder than I'd ever heard it. I don't think I like this version of you, Alexandra. That's the thing, Mom, I said. I'm not asking you to like me. I'm telling you that I finally like myself, and that's enough. I hung up the phone. My hand was shaking, but it was from adrenaline, not fear. Evelyn reached across and squeezed my hand. Proud of you, sweetheart, she said softly. The days that followed were strange. The episode had turned me into something of a phenomenon. I gave a TED Talk about designing spaces for equality that went viral. Major clients wanted to work with me specifically because of my philosophy. The firm Marcus Zara and I had built together was suddenly fielding more requests than we could handle. But what surprised me most were the letters. Physical letters sent to my office from people all over the country. People who had been the forgotten child, the black sheep, the overlooked sibling. People who told me my story gave them courage to set boundaries, to walk away from toxic family dynamics, to stop apologizing for existing. One letter in particular stuck with me. It was from a woman in her 60s who had spent her entire life trying to earn her mother's approval. After watching the episode, she wrote, she finally understood that some people will never see your worth, and that doesn't diminish your value. It only reveals their limitations. I framed that letter and put it in my office next to my old wooden desk. 3 weeks after the episode aired, I came home to find a handwritten envelope in my mailbox. The return address was my father's office. Inside was a letter not typed but written in his familiar shaky handwriting. Dear Alex, I've started this letter a dozen times and thrown it away. I don't know how to say this in a way that makes up for everything, so I'll just say it plainly. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for every time I stood by and let your mother dismiss you. I'm sorry for every event I missed because Chloe's needs seemed more immediate. I'm sorry for treating your accomplishments as expected while treating Chloe's mediocrity as something to celebrate. I told myself I was keeping the peace, that your mother would be too difficult if I didn't back her up, that you were strong enough to handle it. But those were excuses. I was a coward. I still am in many ways. I watched that episode 3 times. Each time I saw myself in it. Not directly, but in the shadows. In all the moments you stood alone, in all the times you needed a parent and I wasn't there. You don't owe me forgiveness. You've built an extraordinary life without my support, which tells me everything I need to know about your strength. But I want you to know that I see it now. I see you now, and I'm so very proud of you even though I have no right to that pride. Your father. I read the letter twice, then set it on my kitchen counter. It was something. Not everything, but something. A crack in the wall. 2 days later, my doorbell rang. When I opened it, Chloe stood there, no makeup, eyes red from crying. She looked smaller, somehow diminished. Can I come in? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat in my living room, the ocean visible through the windows, the awkward silence stretching between us. Finally, she spoke. I've been thinking a lot, about everything. About us. About how we grew up. She twisted her hands in her lap. I was jealous of you, Alex. I know that sounds crazy because it seemed like I had everything, but I was jealous. You were smart, you were talented, you didn't need anyone's approval. And her voice cracked, I was nothing without Mom and Dad propping me up. I see that now. The sponsorships are gone. The followers are turning on me. And I realized I never built anything myself. I never had to, because they gave me everything. She looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for being cruel when we were kids. I'm sorry for taking everything and never once asking if you were okay. I'm sorry for not standing up for you. I was a terrible sister. I sat there processing. part of me wanted to reject this apology to tell her it was too little too late. But another part of me, the part that had built a house with no hierarchy that believed everyone deserved a seat at the table, knew that healing had to start somewhere. I'm not ready to forget everything I said carefully, and I'm not ready to go back to how things were. But I'm willing to try something new, something where we're equals, where you don't get a free pass and I don't get forgotten. Can you do that? She nodded, wiping her eyes. I want to try. I want to be better. I don't even know who I am without everyone propping me up, but I want to find out. It wasn't a magic moment of reconciliation. It wasn't all forgiven, but it was a start. A few weeks later, I invited my family over for dinner. Not a big event. Just the 5 of us, my parents, Chloe, Evelyn, and me. They walked through my house for the first time since I'd bought it, and I watched their reactions. My mother tried to hide her awe behind criticism, pointing out that certain design choices were impractical. My father was quiet, taking it all in. But it was Chloe who surprised me. She stopped in front of the old wooden desk in my office. "This is the desk from your childhood room," she said softly. I nodded. "I've had it forever, moved it everywhere I've gone." She turned to look at me. "I remember this desk. You used to sit here doing homework while I watched TV downstairs. I thought you were weird for studying so much." She paused. "I didn't realize you were building something. Even back then." We had dinner not at the grand dining table, but at a smaller table I'd set up near the fireplace. My mother was stiff uncomfortable with the casual setting. My father kept trying to make small talk that fell flat. Chloe picked at her food. Only Evelyn seemed at ease, watching all of us with her sharp, knowing eyes. The meal passed in relative silence, but it wasn't the silence of neglect this time. It was the silence of people trying to find new language, new ways of being together. Before they left, my mother stopped at the door. She looked at me, really looked at me for maybe the first time in my life. "I'm sorry, Beverly," she said stiffly, using my middle name, which she always did when she was uncomfortable. "I'm sorry I didn't see what I was doing. I'm sorry I made you feel like you didn't matter." It wasn't the eloquent apology I had once dreamed of. It wasn't tearful or dramatic, but it was sincere in its way. A small crack in decades of armor. "Thank you," I said simply. I didn't say I forgave her. I wasn't sure I did yet, but I acknowledged the effort. Life moved forward. My career continued to flourish. Marcus and I grew closer, our partnership deepening into something that might become more romantic or might stay as this perfect supportive friendship. Either way, I wasn't worried about defining it. I was learning that not everything needed a label. Zara became my family in every way that mattered. She pushed me to take bigger risks, to stop playing small, even in my success. When I doubted myself, she was there with her sharp tongue and sharper insight. My relationship with my parents and Chloe improved slowly. It wasn't the family from a greeting card. We had years of damage to undo, and some of it would never fully heal. But we built something new, something honest. My mother stopped comparing me to Chloe. My father started showing up. Chloe and I had coffee once a month, awkward at first, then gradually easier. Evelyn visited, often sitting on my balcony watching the ocean. She told me she was proud of me not for the house, not for the success, but for refusing to shrink myself to make others comfortable. "That's the real achievement," she said. "Not the villa, not the awards, but staying true to yourself when everyone around you wanted you to be smaller." The HGTV episode won awards. I got offers for more television appearances, book deals, speaking engagements. I was selective, choosing only the opportunities that aligned with my values, that allowed me to tell the story of equality and self-worth. And through it all, I came home to this house, this beautiful, intentional space I had created. Every room still felt equal. Every space still mattered. It was a physical manifestation of everything I had learned, everything I had become. Sometimes I stood on that balcony where the wine glass had shattered, where I had received that dismissive text, and I smiled. Not because I had gotten revenge, not because my family had finally acknowledged me, but because I had learned the most important lesson of all. I didn't need their table. I had built my own. And at my table, everyone was welcome. Everyone mattered. Everyone had a voice, including me, especially me. The forgotten daughter had built an empire, not of spite, not of bitterness, but of radical self-worth and unshakable belief in equality. And that, I realized, was the best revenge of all. not destroying them, but building something so beautiful, so meaningful that their neglect became irrelevant. I had won not by taking from them, but by refusing to let them take from me anymore. Sometimes the greatest act of rebellion is simply living well, building something magnificent, refusing to shrink, and finally, after so many years of being invisible, taking up all the space you deserve. So here's my question for you. Have you ever built your own table after being denied a seat at someone else's? Have you ever had to choose yourself over people who should have chosen you first? Drop your story in the comments. I want to hear it. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever been the forgotten one who came out on top, hit that like button. Subscribe to hear more stories about people who refused to stay small. Because you deserve to take up space too. You always did. Your worth isn't determined by who sees it. It's determined by you recognizing it yourself. And once you do, once you really understand that nothing can make you invisible again, you become unmissable, unforgettable, and entirely beautifully free.